Now, conservatives like to present themselves as the party of religion, the party of Christianity. How their members, the members of the conservative movement, are actually they're the only ones that are actually Christian in America, and they're the only ones that are defending Christianity. Well, it turns out that according to a study, reading the Bible actually makes you more liberal instead of conservative. What in the world? Well, hold on. So I've got some information now. According to a study published in Christianity Today, people who say they read the Christian Bible are actually far more likely to support liberal policies compared to people who actually don't read their Bible. See, I've said this before. If you actually read what's in the Bible and read about Jesus, Jesus is actually quite liberal in his views and what he does, or what he supposedly did. The conservatives, a lot of conservatives, like to ignore that. Now, they also found a startling difference in opinion between people who say they read the Bible on their own, apart from any outside influence. So you take the Bible, you read it by yourself, right? Instead of relying on what a pastor has to say about it. Interesting. Now, they found a difference in this between people who read the Bible on their own, as I said, and people who participated in what they call guided reading under the direction of church leaders or others. Now, according to this, while most studies have found strong association with regular church attendance and conservative views, their study was first to look at how independent Bible reading actually influences political and moral beliefs. The study found that, quote, unlike some other religious practices, reading the Bible more often has some liberalizing effects, or at least makes the reader more prone to agree with liberals on certain issues. Now, obviously, you're not going to agree with liberals on every issue when you read the Bible. No, there are significant differences in opinion between some liberals and some biblical views, right? Especially on things like LGBT rights. But nonetheless, it has some liberalizing effects. Very, very interesting. Now, this is true. It continues. This is true even when accounting for factors such as political beliefs, education level, income level, gender, race, and religious measures. Like, for example, which religious tradition one affiliates with and one's views of biblical literalism. So, that's really fascinating. But it also makes all sorts of sense. Now, once again, there's numerous examples of Jesus doing incredibly liberal things. Remember, he went into the temple and overturned the tables of the money changers because it was a den of evil. Get that shit out of here. Don't don't put the bankers up in the church. Especially since they're screwing people over. No, get that shit out of here. You're not supposed to mix religion and government. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. That also means, like, pay your taxes. So, yeah, it makes sense that, of course, a lot of people who actually read the Bible and actually read what's in it and what Jesus actually said would be like, yeah, oh, yeah, well, Jesus is obviously for the poor and for the homeless and the needy. That does not line up with Republican policies. Now, this continues with some specific examples. And here are some of the findings as reported in Christianity Today. Quote, support for abolishing the death penalty increased by about 45% for each increase on the 5-point scale measuring biblical or Bible reading frequency. So the more you read the Bible, the more incompatible support for the death penalty becomes. Once again, that makes all the sense in the world, considering how Jesus was a recipient of the death penalty. You read that, you're like, I can't really support that. Yeah, and of course, Republicans, conservatives, are for the death penalty when it comes to legislation. Where liberals, more liberal views are like, no, let's get rid of it. We shouldn't kill people. We shouldn't let the state kill people. if all life was precious, then yeah, we shouldn't kill people. We shouldn't let the state kill people. Especially as some of the methods now are even worse than they were before. I mean, there's no humane way to kill a person, but they certainly tried. Now they've ran out because a lot of the European suppliers of the particular drug cocktail that we use to kill people, well, they refuse to sell it to us now. So now, in places like Oklahoma, people, and yes, I know they're criminals, but they're getting these terrible mixtures of drugs that prolong agony for hours. It's barbaric. Anybody who's a Christian, anybody who's a good person, and you don't have to be a Christian to be a good person, but anybody who's a good person looks at that and says, that's bullshit. We should not be doing that. Now, this one's also really interesting. This is the science-religion divide. See, a lot of people think that, well, science and religion, obviously they can't go together, right? They can't complement each other. They have to be at odds. Well, according to this, a lot of people say that the more that someone reads the Bible, the more likely he or she is to believe science and religion are compatible. I say that I don't know if they're really compatible. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think one is completely different than the other. The Bible, to me, I'm an atheist, so the Bible to me is a selection of stories that are pretty fanciful. I mean, you've got 7-headed dragons and you know, people living for 700 to 900 years. Not exactly in the realm of scientific possibility. So I don't really think they're compatible. I also don't think they're really incompatible. They're too different to judge. It's like taking apples and oranges. You can't compare a science textbook to a Bible. One is not the same as the other. So you can't really judge them against each other. One's a collection of stories, and the other's actual fact. And facts matter. But nonetheless, some of these people do think that, no, they are compatible. For each increase in the 5-point scale, the odds that they see religion and science as incompatible decrease by 22%. So the more you read your Bible, the more you think, oh yeah, science and religion, they can get along. At least I know that they can get along. And I do agree with that. We can have religion, and we can also believe in climate change, which is what some people don't want to do. Now, also, this is what's really important here. Social justice. They asked about social and economic justice. It asked, how important is it to actively seek social and economic justice in order to be a good person? Again, those with more political leanings were more likely to say it's very or somewhat important. And those who read the Bible more often were more likely to agree. Indeed, the study says that they are almost 35% more likely to agree. Those who are most engaged by their faith, by directly and frequently reading its source material, are those who are most supportive of social and economic justice. Well, look at that. That includes things like equality. That includes things like raising the minimum wage, paying people enough to survive. That includes social safety nets. If you read the Bible, you realize that the Bible supports these things. That Jesus would support these things. How is that compatible with current conservative Republican politics? It's not at all compatible. Not at all. Now on freedom, even on freedom, for each increased level of Bible reading frequency, support for things like the Patriot Act decreased by about 13%. Yeah, the more you read the Bible, the less you support things like the Patriot Act. That's also really interesting. And now there's the subject of consumerism. They asked about that as well. Participants were asked if it was important to consume less goods in order to be a good person. Now, it said, ask an evangelical who is politically conservative, has some college education, has an average level of income, is a biblical literalist, and does not read the Bible, and you'll have only a 22% chance he or she will say that reducing consumption is part of ethical living. Ask the same person, only now they actually read their Bible, and you have a 44% chance that they'll say so. So, the same person, a conservative biblical literist, but they actually don't read their Bible. And you ask them, they're only 22% likely to say that no, reducing your consumerism, not taking part in buying all sorts of shit just to buy shit, 22%. Have them actually read the Bible, and that doubles. That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, there's another recent study that was also conducted by the Christian research group Lifeway that also indicates one of the problems, and I always point this out, how most Christians, the majority of Christians, aren't actually getting their religion from reading the Bible. They actually get it from listening to other sources. Now, I wonder what those other sources are. Maybe the CBN, Uncle Pat, Pat Robertson, Pastor Jeffress, Robert Jeffress, other pastors that are televangelists, Fox News, pastors that preach from the pulpit, that preach politics from the pulpit, sorry. And see, those are the guys at the problem. And you get into this sort of tribalism, where it's not about the source material anymore. It's not about the Bible. It's not about Jesus anymore. It's all about the tribe. It's all about, the group. And it turns into a groupthink scenario, where this pastor reads you stuff, cherry picks things out. For example, they cherry pick out the stuff about the gays, right? How the gays, it's so immoral to be gay, right? But they also don't talk about how it's immoral to be incredibly rich while there are people around you that are suffering. They cherry pick that. And as I mentioned before, everyone cherry picks. But these guys cherry pick for a specific agenda, a conservative agenda. And it's incompatible with the Bible. Now, there's also the render Caesar and, render unto Caesar with the Caesars, basically pay your taxes. And even on the pro-life thing, right? God's actually pro-abortion. Remember, there's a Bible passage which gave instructions on how to mix up a specific concoction to give it to your wife if you think she's been cheating on you and that your kid's not yours. If the wife miscarries, then she hasn't been faithful to you. That's an abortion. That's all I'm saying. And that's in the Bible. So, yeah. Now, this study, conducted among Christian churchgoers, found that only 90% of Christian churchgoers say that they read the Bible daily. Almost an equal number, 18%, said they read it rarely or almost never. Most respondents said they read the Bible once a month, a few times a month, while only 14% said they read it once a week. So, that's how much they actually read their Bible, versus not at all. Most people tend to rely on a pastor or someone in authority reading it for you. And the problem with that is that they can interpret it and they can cherry pick it, as I mentioned. They can cherry pick out anything to make their own political views. It's turned into politics. It's turned into control. They're not actually reading the source material anymore. They preach to an ideology. Now, Barry Goldwater kind of said it best when it comes to an ideology, and actually when it comes to conservatism and Republicans. He said, "Mark my word, if and when these preachers get control of the Republican Party, and they're sure trying to do so, and I think at this point we can all agree that they've pretty much succeeded, it's going to be a terrible damn problem. Frankly, these people frighten me. Politics and governing demand compromise, but these Christians believe that they're acting in the name of God, so they can't and won't compromise. I know. I've tried to deal with them. And now, unfortunately, we're all having to deal with them." The point is, from my point of view, Christianity on the right has been perverted by pastors and, more importantly, politicians. If you remember the moral majority movement, which is neither a majority nor is it all that moral. They use that to blend right-wing ideology and religion and Christianity with things like free market principles, right? With free market capitalism. There's nothing more incompatible with what's going on in the Bible than establishment free market capitalism. I mean, think about it this way, right? Eliminating safety nets for poor people is not a Christian position. Yet the Republican Party claims that they're the party of Christianity. It's not at all true. It's not at all true. It's not a Christian idea. Another thing, supporting endless wars. That's not a Christian idea. What if I mentioned the death penalty? Murder by the state. I don't know if I have to remind you again the Bible's stance on killing other people for doing crime. Okay? I don't think I have to do that. The Republican Party, because of that moral majority movement, because of the Jerry Falwells, they perverted the religion. They perverted it in their own name. Now, it's not to say the Democrats are perfect. For example, on the idea of endless wars, well, you've got certain Democrats also support endless war. But almost certainly, at the end of the day, liberalism is actually a lot more compatible with Christianity than a lot of people think. At least certainly more so when you look about the current conservative Republican movement.